What we're going to be doing this afternoon is showing a step-by-step installation of the bracket, a KR205, along with the KG867 that will provide you with a roller capability, a flip-up roller capability, edge roller, in place of the one that is used on the Cobra 4. We're going to start off with the bracket that mounts to these two holes that actually holds the flip-up roller. You find that the machine has already been tapped with the two holes, and this bracket is provided with a slide so that it can be slid up and down to find that sweet spot that you need to be able to mount the roller guide to the machine. And in case you're wondering, my hands aren't working all that great today. It's 17 degrees outside. I'm not sure what the temperature is here in the workshop, but we've got some heaters going to help raise the temperature just a little bit. But it was snowing and very cold out today here in Tennessee. I'm getting a little assistance from Kevin, my youngest son, on helping me hold these things as I get it going into the machine. Now you want to be a little slow at going in and work the screws, the bolts, because the threads on the machine are fresh. They've never had anything tapped into them, and they feel a little snug. So you don't want to cross thread anything. So I would take my time on working those bolts in so that you don't cross thread or strip anything out, because it'd be a real pain in the rear to try and get it tapped and repaired. Now these are tight. I'm going to back them off so that there is some movement in that up and down bracket until I get the flip up roller mounted to that, and then we can determine just where we want this slide bracket to be. Now I want to point out that this bracket is threaded here on the bottom with two holes, so that this bracket on the flip up roller guide will sit like this, and then the two bolts will go in and hold the one bracket to this bracket. I'm going to pause the video for just a moment as I start these, and then we'll continue with it in just a second. As I mentioned, the original bracket that bolts to the machine has two holes that are threaded. So you want to install the roller bracket from the rear so that the two bolts will hold it to the front bracket. And you're putting a little too much tension on there right now. Now I'm not going to snug them all the way up. I'm just going to take them to the point where they're there. That way we have some ability to adjust this bracket, because you have the ability to adjust back and forth or left to right. This other bracket allows you to adjust up and down. Once we get everything set, which we're going to pause the video for a moment, we'll get these set and then we'll come back again. And what I'm going to do is flip it up out of the way once we get it set, and I'll show you when it is set. And I'm going to show you the comparison on how the original sets on here and the difference it makes between using the two. So we'll be right back. Okay, we're going to be going back over some of the steps that we talked about a minute ago. As I mentioned, there's two separate parts to this bracket. You have the original bracket that adjusts or that attaches to the machine that gives you the flexibility of adjusting up and down. Then on that same bracket, on the front part of this, which is threaded, you attach your flip-up bracket with the bolts from rear to front. Because this bracket is threaded, it attaches this bracket to the bracket that's attached to the machine. This does have some flexibility, but as you will see from others that have also posted videos, JLS Leather, Jeff, he's mentioned that this is adjusted all the way to the left on the machine. There is another adjustment bolt here that adjusts the travel of the flip-up bracket sort of forward and reverse. This bracket which sits here, has a bolt and a nut on it. What we have done is taken and unthreaded it all the way and put the nut on the other side of this bracket that allows it to be locked down. What it does is it adjusts this flip-up bracket sort of forward and reverse and a little bit of up and down. It gives you some flexibility and adjustment there. Once you have this all mounted up, then you got to go through your steps of adjusting where everything is sitting. We found that the bracket that holds the roller will sit all the way to the left. You can see this bracket that attaches to the machine is somewhat raised all the way up. This does have a notch in it so that it can be slid up and down. The other bracket does have slotted holes so that you can adjust it left and right. What we've done is remove the iPad from the tripod so we don't have the lighting that we had just a moment ago. But what we want to do is be able to show how this bracket sits on here once it's all mounted up. Now what we found is that this is adjusted all the way down, which allows it to sit very near the needle, and then we can adjust in and out, as others have pointed out, with the adjustment screw on the opposite side of this bracket. And you can see very easily how this just flips up out of the way. You can flip it up out of your way, flip it down, it's ready to go. Flip it up, it's out of your way. You can sew everything else that you want to sew on a day-to-day purpose. Flip it down when you're doing belts or edges on a wallet where you want to have a controlled edge and not be wandering all around. For those of us who don't have steady hands and good eyesight anymore, we have this adjusted into where there's about 1/8 of an inch. There is some screw lash here on this screw that you'll see as I'm rotating it. There is no movement there when I'm moving this about 1/4 of an inch either way. You'll see that, well, actually I didn't go all the way in. Now we've traveled all the way in to where there's absolutely no room there. Now this can be locked down. That is something that is possible to do. There is a screw here that once you get it set where you want it, you take that, lock it down, and it's not going to move. What I'm going to do is I'm going to flip this up out of the way. I'm going to pause the camera for a minute, and I'm going to stall the stock one so that we can see the difference on how it sets and how this is much better than the original that came with the machine. What I want to mention is that you do have to remove this lever. You're going to be relegated to using your foot control all the time with your needle and foot to work with this roller. That's one of the give backs that you'll have to sacrifice with, but it's not such a bad deal. I'm still training myself to be able to learn to use this so that when I come to corners, I raise up my foot, I turn my material, and nothing digs into the material. So I'm not sure that this is a bad thing by doing away with that. But it is one of the drawbacks of going to this particular setup. However, again, it is a trade-off of much greater flexibility, greater control with this setup versus the stock one, as I'll show you in just a minute. All right. I'm sure we all know and have come to love how well this particular device works for being an edge guide when we're doing belts or other items that we want to have control on the edge of what it is that we're sewing. And as you can see, it's not only a pain just installing it, it's a pain when we get to the other side of the machine to use the device, because everything has got to line up just perfectly, as we saw there in the difficulty just installing it. Now, I want to note that when this roller guide comes in and it hits about here, it raises up. And if we got to go any farther, because of the machine, there is a rise here in how it's built in the housing. And because of that, we'll come back around on this side and we'll show you how this roller guide, when you hit that area, if you needed to come in that far, this roller raises up and it would allow for thin material to travel under your roller in the event you were working with leather that thin. So we can see how that's somewhat of a non-useful item. So again, what we've done is we've taken this completely out of play. And I would imagine to some degree, if we wanted to, we could do away with this bracket. However, I have not looked at that yet or entertained that thought. What we've done now is installed this roller, which is sitting just above our plate here. It allows the roller to turn. There's very little clearance underneath for giving us much better and greater control over our edge on belts or anything else that we want to sew. I don't think I need to go through and show the samples that many others have done. There are several examples out there. GLS Leather, Jeff, he's one that has a video up on this, and I'll leave that as it may.